Hi and welcome to my Python YouTube channel. It's awesome to have you here. If you like this video, a thumbs up would be great. And make sure to subscribe for future videos. I also have a blog at prosperacoder.com with lots of cool stuff, so feel free to check it out. In the previous part of this series, we added a background image to the player's area of the settings screen. Today we'll see how to add graphical assets to our project. The graphical assets in the race screen. Here's what they look like in the final version. So, here you can see the track image on which the slugs are going to run. We have the 4 images of the slugs in top view. Now let's make them run so that we can see another image over here. This is the silhouette image of the winning slug. Besides, there are some labels on top of the track which we are going to add. So the names of the slugs, wins and odds. Let's start with the racetrack.png image, which is going to be used for our track image. You can find the file in the assets folder. If you hover your mouse over the file, you can see how big the image is. It's 1000 by 200 pixels. And this is the size we want it to be at all times during the game. Even if you resize the app window, the size of the racetrack image shouldn't change. So we need a fixed size for the widget. Now, what widget are we actually going to use? Well, there are several options, but the easiest one seems to be the image widget, which is available in Kivy out of the box. All you have to do is set the source property to the path to the image file. So let's try to implement the track image. At this moment, we have only some placeholder code here in the track area of the race screen that displays a label with the word track. And this is what the screen looks like when we run it. Fine, let's resize the window slightly. Here we have the track. It just says track, nothing more. So let's replace the label with an image widget. So here we don't need this label anymore. Let's use an image instead. Now first we have to set the source property. This should be the path to the image file. Assets racetrack.png. Now the image should be a fixed size, 1000 by 200. So we have to set size hint to none and the size to 1000 by 200. Now let's also center the image vertically within its layout. So pass hint center y.5. Now let's save and run the app again. Let's resize the window. Now as you can see, here's the track image and it's always the same size regardless of how much you resize the window. And it's always vertically centered. Now, the track image is not the only thing we need in the track subarea. There are also the top view images of the slugs and some labels. So it would be convenient to enclose all these elements in another container. It'll be easier for us to use coordinates relative to the track subarea when we add the other widgets. So a good candidate for the container is a relative layout. So let's add the layout and put the track image in it. Let's go back to our Kivy file. And now, here's the track area, the track subarea, and first, let's put everything in a container, a relative layout. Now the image should be inside the relative layout. Now let's move the sizing and positioning code to the container. So we can now remove this from here and put it here. Fine. Now, with the sizing and positioning code moved to the relative layout container, there will be no difference if you run the app now. So let's save and run the app again. As you can see, it looks the same. But this will make our life easier when we then add the other widgets. Speaking of which, let's add the white labels and the 4 Slug images. Now, with the track image in place, let's position the labels on it. First of all, let's add some class rules. There are 3 types of labels: the medium-sized ones for the names of the slugs, the small ones for the wins, and the big ones for the odds. Let's name the classes white name label, white wins label, and white odds label respectively. So we have to add the class rules here at the top. Let's scroll up a bit, and here we have the white labels. White odds label, white name label, white wins label. As you can see, these are just simple labels that inherit from both label, each of them with a different font size: 32, 18, 14. Later in the series, when we discuss properties, we will create a custom widget that will hold the slug name and wins information, but for now, let's just create 4 separate box layouts, one for each slug. Now, the positions of the widgets in the relative layout will be relative to the container. To better understand where the vertical positions that I'm using come from, here's a little image of the relative layout with the track image and the proportions that you can see in the code. So have a look at this image. Its size is 1000 pixels by 200 pixels, and the proportions are 0.125, 0.375, 0.625, and 0.875. We just want each box layout with the 2 slug info labels to be centered on the slug's own lane. By the way, the 4 lanes are separated by white lines which are part of the image. The starting line and the finish line are also there. And now let's add the white labels. Let's go back to our track subarea and let's add the code below the image. So here are the labels with slug info. We'll use a vertical box layout for each slug. So let's write the code for the first slug. We have a box layout, a vertical box layout. Now let's add some properties to the box layout. Size hint, size, pass hint. Now the box layout will have a fixed size that will help us keep the text where we want it. To position the box layout, we're using the pass hint property with values that will place layout just slightly to the right of the left border of the parent layout, which is the relative layout, and near the top. These values are relative to relative layout. And now the labels. We need one label with the name of the slug and one label with the win number of the slug. So inside this box layout, we have to add these 2 white labels: white name label and white wins label. Now this text is arbitrary. Well, not this one because this is the name of the first slug, but this is arbitrary. It will be calculated programmatically later on. And now let's add similar code for the other slugs. So here's the second box layout for the second slug, whose name is Trusty. So exactly the same code. with 2 labels. Next, the third slug, his name is Kivy, and one more box layout for Slowpoke, the fourth slug. Slowpoke. Fine. Let's save and run. Now you can see the names of the slugs and win info on the track. Even if you resize the window, the labels will remain on the track relative to the relative layout their containing box layouts are in. Now the last thing to do as far as labels are concerned are the big odds labels. They should be positioned near the finish line. So let's go back to our race.kv file, and here down below let's add the code, the odds labels. Now these values are arbitrary. They will change later and will be calculated after each race. And now here's the position. X is set to 0.77, which will place them just before the finish line. And the center Y values are set to the values that you saw in the image with the proportions that I showed you before. Now let's save this code and run it. And now here, before the finish line, you can see the odds labels. Now we need the top view images of the 4 slugs. You can find the images in the slugs subfolder of the assets folder. There are actually 2 images for each slug: body, which is 235 by 49 pixels, and eye, which is 54 by 12 pixels. Each slug should then actually consist of 3 smaller images, the body and 2 eyes. To make the code less repetitive, we will later create a custom widget and then add 4 instances of it in the track subarea. But for now, let's adjust 4 relative layouts, each containing the respective body and 2 eyes. Now, here's the final version of the race screen. As you can see in the final version of the race screen, the slugs will rotate their eyes. For now, the eyes will be immobile, but still we will rotate them. To do that, we'll use some canvas context instructions like push matrix and pop matrix to save and restore the context respectively, as well as rotate to actually rotate the eyes. And one more thing, when I use the word eye in the context of our project, I mean the whole tentacle with the eye at the end. So sorry for not being biologically correct. Anyway, let's get back to our code. Now the code is pretty lengthy, but it's pretty straightforward too. So just take your time to examine it carefully. So here, under the white labels with the odds, let's add the slug images. And let's start with the first slug, which is Speedster. Good. Now let's put the body image and the 2 instances of the eye image in a relative layout. So we'll use a relative layout. Now, by putting the body image and the 2 instances of the eye image in a relative layout, we'll be able to position the eyes relative to the body easily. Let's set the path hint, size hint, and size properties like so. Now, the exact values that I'm using in the size and path hint properties were determined by trial and error and just seem to be working fine for our purposes. Now then, we need the body image. So let's use the image widget and set its source property to the path to our speedster body image. And then we have the image for the left eye. So another image. Now here we need some canvas instructions because we want to rotate the eye. So let's use the canvas before instruction set. Canvas before. Now the first thing we have to do is save the context before rotation. So we use the push matrix instruction. Good. Now let's rotate the eye 30 degrees counterclockwise on the z-axis. So let's use the rotate instruction. So the angle is 30 degrees. The axis is z, this x, y, z. No rotation on x, no rotation on y. And there is rotation only on z. So this rotation should be around the point which is horizontally on the left border of the eye and vertically halfway its height. So we set origin to self.x and self-center y. Then we need to add the canvas after instruction. And in this instruction, we will just restore the context. So we have to use the pop matrix instruction here. Next, we have to set the source of the image. Here's our speedster eye PNG file. Now the position of the eye is relative to the relative layout it's in, along with the body image and the other eye image. So let's set pass hint to the following values. Let's also scale the eye image down to look well proportioned. So size hint 0.25, 0.25. So this is actually the left eye. This is the left eye. Let's put it over here so that we know. Left eye. This is the body. Good. And now we need the right eye, which is very similar. So let me just copy the code and explain it briefly. So the right image, the code is the same, but we just set the angle to -30 because the eyes are going to rotate in opposite directions. And the other values are also slightly different. Here y is set to 0.45, here is set to 0.3. It just works fine with these values. Anyway, this is the code for the first Slug, Speedster. So we have a relative layout with the body image and two eye images, the left eye and the right eye. Now we need similar code for all the other Slugs. So here's the code for Trusty, the second Slug, which is very similar. Here it is. So Trusty, the second Slug, again the body image. Here's the path to the image of Trusty's body and the two eyes. The first one is rotated 30 degrees, the second one is rotated -30 degrees. Then we have also the same code for Iffy and Slowpoke, the other two Slugs. So let me just copy this to make it faster. Okay. Good. Now before we run this code, one more thing. I renamed the files in the assets folder, in the Slug subfolder. Speedster body, Trusty body, Iffy body, and Slowpoke body. They used to be called speedster.png, trusty.png, and so on. But for this code to work, we have to rename the files because they have to match. So Now we have speedster body.png. So we add this part to each of the 4 names. Here's what it looks like in the assets folder. Iffy body, slowpoke body, speedster body, and trusty body. And now let me run this code. Good. Now you can see the 4 slugs in top view. Now the only thing that we still have to take care of is the winner image, which should appear here after each race. At this moment we have the following code that creates the winner subarea of the track area. We have a box layout with 3 labels. The labels read: the winner is, trusty, and winner. Fine. And you already saw what it looks like. We just get these labels here. The winner is trusty, winner. It's hard-coded for now. Now let's replace the label with the text winner with an image of a slug. Which slug exactly appears here will later depend on which one has won a particular race. But for now, let's just choose one of them as a placeholder. For example, trusty. You will find the image file in the silhouette subfolder of the assets folder. The name of the file is trusty.png. So let me just replace this code with the image of trusty. Fine. Let's save this code and run it. Now you can see the image, the silhouette of trusty. Well, this slug, trusty, is gonna be a permanent winner for some time. Okay, that's it for this video. If you like it, a thumbs up would be great. Also, make sure to subscribe for future videos. If you want to leave a comment or ask a question, you're welcome to do so. Thanks for watching.